So hello everyone and welcome to an important video. Recently NDCT 2026 amendment were published and big changes are coming in India's clinical research landscape, and they will impact every sponsor, CRO, investigator and ethics committee. The NDCT 2026 amendment to the new drugs and clinical trial rules are here to reshape approval timelines, compliance, safety reporting and regulatory expectation. If you're a pharma, biotech, or clinical research professional, this is not just an update, it's a shift that you must understand. So let's make sure that you understand the updates in this amendment, and you also need to subscribe to the channel to get such amazing update regularly. Without further ado, let's start. So the first update is regarding the reduced rate tapism in the research. Okay, so it means that earlier in old regime you need to apply to the test license, then wait for 90 days and then manufacture a drug. Okay, but there has been amendment regarding non-commercial manufacturing of the drug. Okay, where you don't need to wait for 90 days, you need to submit an online intimation and then you can manufacture the drug immediately. Now I don't mean that you can start full-fledged manufacturing, that you will only do once the drug gets approved, but this reform is regarding the non-commercial manufacturing of the drug, which means that it applies to smaller quantity of drugs which are specifically manufactured for examination, research and analysis. Okay, so if you want to conduct any kind of research, analysis or examination on a drug, you don't need to wait for the test license approval, which earlier took 90 days. Okay, so this particular 90 days research in your pharma R&D can have a major impact. Okay, not only in terms of the delay in the drug development process, but it also has a commercial aspect to it. And if that particular drug gets delayed, then it also delays the public access towards it. Okay, therefore the government of India has come up with this particular reform where it has reduced the rate tapism, it has accelerated the process, and only you need to submit the online intimation and you can start manufacturing the drug. Okay, which means that the regulatory authority knows that you are manufacturing the drug and it is for examination, research or analysis purpose. Okay, so that was the first significant reform. The next reform is regarding the deregulation of approval for BA/BE studies, okay, regarding the export. Okay, so any molecule which you need to export, you need to conduct the BA/BE study, and there has been amendment to Rule 31 of the NDCT 2019 regulations. Earlier, what you did is you submitted Form CT05, okay, and then you waited for Form CT07, which is the permission for the approval, and then you started the study. But now, with the new workflow and new provision in Rule 31, you submit the online prior intimation form, that is Form CT05. Okay, you intimate the regulatory authority will receive the application or intimation, they will acknowledge. Okay, this is not the approval, this is just the acknowledgement, and based on the acknowledgement itself you can start the study immediately. Okay, so you don't need to wait for the entire approval process, you can intimate the regulatory authority, and once you receive the intimation acknowledgement you can start the study. This will significantly accelerate the process of approval. Okay, so this particular process, okay, the study may be conducted upon submission of the online application and its acknowledgement by the central licensing authority, which means that you don't need to wait for the approval will definitely come. But even if the regulatory agency, that is CDSCO, acknowledges that you are about to conduct a BA/BE trial, then also you can start a particular clinical trial. Okay, but a very big caveat in this particular amendment is that the study must be for export purposes only. Okay, not for the Indian market. If you want to conduct the study for the Indian market, you will have to follow the regular procedure. But if it is for export purposes, then you can accelerate the time frame, and I'll tell you why this is done. So this particular thing is done because of the export criteria, and this update to Rule 31 subsection 2 is done because this particular study were prior approved. Okay, so you can intimate and then start the BA/BE study just to study the design, subject, dosage form and the sample size. Okay, and this study which are for export must be approved in India and one of the following jurisdiction, which is the US, UK, EU, or Australia and Japan. Okay, so if the study is approved in one of the countries, then and only then you can bring that drug to India and go through this intimidation. Okay, that is Rule 31. In this study, you will have only specific criteria that you can test. In terms of design, it can be single dose, two period, two sequence, two treatment study. In terms of subject, you are only going to use the healthy individual, that is study volunteers. The drug form would be oral dosage form only, no injectables or other kind of dosage. Okay, only oral drugs. Again, the sample size here, the subject must be more than 18 years of age. Okay, so it is not an exemption to the regulatory trial approval process, but it is for accelerated testing of the drug, which is already approved in other market like US, UK, Europe, Australia, and Japan. Okay, so that is regarding defining the scope of this particular rule. Again, there are mandatory exclusions. Okay, not all drugs are approved for the prior intimation pathway. Okay, so drugs such as cytotoxic substances, hormones, narcotic and psychotropic substances, drug with narrow therapeutic index, drugs that have highly variable PK. Okay, so for risk management of this particular drug, they strictly remain under the regulatory scrutiny under Rule 34. Okay, so all this type of drug which has higher risk per se are exempted, are included in the regular drug approval process. They are explicitly excluded in the prior intimation pathway. Okay, so make sure these particular drugs are not under the prior intimation pathway. The next update is regarding the new operational workflow and ethics committee oversight. Okay, so in terms of updates or 2026 updates or amendment, for ethics committee, the prior intimidation application, okay, must be accompanied by approval from an EC registered under Rule 8, which means that you need to get approval from the ethics committee first under Rule 8 of NDCT, and then and only then you can apply for prior intimation. Okay, again here the mandate is that the EC must maintain a separate record of the review and approval of intimation based study, which means that the EC will not treat this as a regular study if it is a intimation study which has not received the full approval. The EC needs to keep separate record that this is the approval granted to the regular study and this is the approval granted to the intimation based study. Okay, so the ethics committee has additional responsibility to ensure and maintain a separate record of the review and approval of such study. Again, all the records reviewed by the central licensing authority during EC registration and renewal, these studies needs to be mentioned there also. Okay, again now coming to submission of form CT05. So form CT05 you can apply for online. Again, the rule are specified in Rule 33. Okay, so in terms of exemption, there is no exemption for fees. Okay, even if it is an intimation based study, there are fees to be paid. The only exemption is done for institution which is owned and funded by the central or the state government. If it is a government research institute or a hospital, then that particular institution will not require to pay fees for intimation based study. Okay, that will be free of cost for them. But for other private players, for pharma companies, for CROs, you need to pay the fees as per the regular submission of form CT05. Next thing is the acknowledgement part of it. Okay, we have seen the ethics approval, the submission, and now coming on to acknowledgement. So the acknowledgement of prior intimation serve as the legal authorization to proceed, which means that whenever the government or the CDSO sends you acknowledgement of prior intimation study, it carries the same weight as the legal authorization, which means that you can conduct the study hassle free. Okay, there is no questions on it. Okay, the acknowledgement will directly serve as legal authorization to proceed. Okay, now let us see how exactly this particular thing is handled. So whenever it comes to validity, extension and inspection of the regulatory authority for this particular prior intimation study, then an acknowledgement of prior intimation carries the same regulatory weight as the permission. Okay, so the acknowledgement would essentially mean permission. And in terms of legal equivalence, you can see that there has been amendment to rules 35, 36, 37, and 38, where they ensure that the acknowledgement is treated as the formal permission to conduct the study. In terms of validity and extension to Rule 36, where the validity followed standard protocol, so there are exceptions added where the central licensing authority may extend the acknowledgement period for 1 year upon the written request to justify whether it is necessary or not. Again, in terms of inspection for under Rule 35, the Central Licensing Authority, that is CDSCO, maintains the right to inspect the facility and the studies conducted under prior intimation. So, if the study is a prior intimation study, it does not mean that it escapes the regulatory inspection. Okay, under Rule 35, they have amended and they have brought these studies under the inspection purview also. Again, they have made update to Rule 38 where the Central Licensing Authority clearly retains the power to suspend or cancel the acknowledgement if the conditions are violated of the approval. Okay, so if there is any violation for the prior intimation study, then the permission can be suspended or cancelled also. Okay, so a lot of you must have confusion regarding prior intimation and regular approval. Then this particular area, the government has even clarified regarding legal equivalence, validity, extension, inspection, and cancellation of the prior intimation studies. Now, what impact has this done in terms of the R&D life cycle? So earlier you need to wait for 90 days at least. That is was the minimum time you required to get the approval. But by accelerating this time frame, the minimum time that is saved in this particular process is come down to 45 days. Okay, there is 50% reduction in terms of R&D time. Okay, now how will this particular thing impact the industry? So annually you get 35,000 license for the clinical trial studies. There are 4,500 BA/BE application annually. Okay, so by following this particular update or amendment to NDCT 2019, the 2026 amendment definitely enables faster commencement of the study, which benefit the generic pharmaceutical industry and export capabilities. Okay, so drugs which are required to produce after the patent expiration, that is the generic drug, this particular process of prior intimation where the drug is already approved, and if they want to make generic drugs in India, then you need to get the acknowledgement itself through prior intimation. It will save a lot of time, a lot of efforts, and it can accelerate the generic drug production, which can have a direct impact on patient safety and accessibility to affordable healthcare. Okay, so that is a significant step taken by the government to ensure that the general public is benefited. It has also accelerated the time frame and reduced the R&D cost, which can directly translate into the cost of the medication when it reached to the end user, that is the patient. Okay, and through reducing this particular timeline, they have also accelerated the export capabilities so that India can be more competitive in terms of export of the manufactured drug. Okay, so that is a significant step in terms of export as well as the availability of the drug to the general public. So, if you are not aware of the NDCT 2019 rules or what Form CT05 stands for, CT06 stand for, I have given a snippet so that you can pause the video and look at all the forms under the new drugs and clinical trial rules. Just spend some time, read each and everything so that you are more aware that which particular form needs to be submitted for which particular trial activity. It is very good idea to know whether you are conducting a clinical trial under Form CT05 or CT06. Okay, so it is very important. So thank you for watching this video till the end. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that I can bring up such quality content regularly. Make sure you subscribe, and thank you.